Welcome to Scepter Publishers' very first bonus episode with one of our authors, Dia Boyle. Welcome, Dia.
Thanks, Katie. I'm so happy to be talking to you.
I am too. So get us started. Tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote that is actually coming out this month, October.
I'm so happy that it's finally coming out. It's been a long process for me, but a really fun process.
Mhm.
I don't know, I guess to give a really brief summary of the book. In the book, I'm exploring what a home is and what a home is for. That's really the nutshell of the content of the book. And you could say that in a fancier way as what's the nature and purpose of the home, but really that's what I'm doing. So I look into what that is, and then I um, talk about like ways to ways to achieve that end. Ways like ideas for or methods for uh, producing a home, making a home, creating a home that's going to actually be a successful home, given what a home is meant for. Maybe I can share
Yeah,
what that is. That's
absolutely.
probably helpful. Um, so I have a working definition of the home as a material structure. So, for most of us, that's a house. It could be an apartment. It could be a tenement. It could be a castle. But a material structure that's organized for the care of the family that lives there, or of whomever lives there, right? If you're a couple of roommates living together, it could be for the care of those who live there. But in most cases, it's family. Most people who are listening to this or reading the book they're going to be concerned about the family. Um, so that's a really key thing. It's organized for the purpose of their care.
Hmm.
And that care is not just their material care, their physical care, enough, food and laundry, but it is the care of them as a human being.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a universal idea, a global idea. Um, it's what do human beings need? And of course, our needs are met outside the home in many different ways. But I think the home is the place where um, our needs in general, so that we can flourish as human beings, are met. Or that's the idea, anyways. And the fact is, it's organized, which means someone or some group of people needs to be doing the work or of organizing, not just the nitty gritty washing the dishes or preparing dinner, but the work of thinking about what do these people who live here need,
Hmm.
and how are we going to meet those needs.
Excellent. So the title of the book is The Thoughtful Home. What, besides like this kind of love that you have for this, like what inspired you to write it? Like you said, it's been a long time in the process. So walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. Um, so I've always loved the home. I always wanted to be a homemaker. When we, in seventh grade, had to say what profession we wanted to be, they didn't let me say to be a homemaker, but I knew that's what I wanted to be for whatever reason. Um, and I've always been really thoughtful too. Like, I guess I'm kind of an intellectual. So whatever I'm doing, I like to think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and what's my goal. So I guess I kind of naturally did that with the home. Um, and um, my husband's a professor. We do a lot of, we have a lot of I have a lot of contact with young women, college students and graduate students, thinking about starting a family, thinking about making a home, or maybe just beginning to make a home. And I noticed sometimes people would come to women, usually women, I think always women would come to me, um, asking kind of for advice or guidance. Other times it would just come up naturally in conversations, and I realized there was a lot of anxiety,
Hmm.
or at least a lack of confidence in what they were proposing to do, or what they were thinking about doing, or what they were doing.
Hmm.
And I really hadn't experienced that. I didn't have a lot of, which isn't to say I'm a perfect homemaker, or it, I mean, or even was very good at it to begin with. But I had a confidence. And I thought about that, and I realized that that confidence came, I think, mostly from, well, from experience of having been raised in a home, that a good home,
Hmm.
but also that the culture um, there was sort of a cultural template for what the home should be.
Hmm.
It wasn't really overt, but I had home ec in middle school. All my peers had home ec in middle school. That doesn't happen anymore, as far as I can tell. It's very rare. But it wasn't just that. It's like there was something called the dinner hour when I was young. If you can't tell by looking at me, I'm a young boomer. So the dinner hour was, I mean, everybody had the dinner hour. It was like a normal thing. And you would never call someone during the dinner hour, for example. You wouldn't have a meeting during the dinner hour. It was just a culturally accepted reality, or
Hmm.
probably parts of the culture where it wasn't accepted, but certainly where I grew up, it was just normal. So no one was trying to make a good home by having a dinner hour. It was just the reality. Well, that's
Hmm.
not true anymore, right?
Hmm.
So young women now, there's not very much cultural support, and in fact, there's a lot of cultural forces that are working against the home. But also, there's just not a lot of thought given to the home. There's a lot of thought given to the marketing of the things that are in the home,
Uh-huh.
what you can buy for your house to furnish your house, but not a lot of thought about what a home is for. Um, so, anyways, to get back to that, so I was thinking about this, and um, I I thought, well, I have some wisdom to share. I
Hmm.
have some experience to share, really more than wisdom. So I gathered some young women together that I happen to know, and I asked them, would you be interested in a little afternoon seminar on making a home? And they were very interested. So I had to kind of bring my thoughts together to do that. Had a great time doing it. I mean, it was not that it was like maybe a dozen women in my living room.
Hmm.
Um, but that helped me to gather my thoughts, start thinking more methodically about what I was doing, why I was doing it. And then that kind of grew into people asked me to give a talk at a parish or give a talk at a diocesan retreat or something like that on the home. And at the end of those talks, people would say, you should write a book. So I
Mm.
kind of had that in the back of my head, back of my mind. And finally, I gave in, and my kids, I had a little more time. And so I decided to start. And I worked at it for years, but more intensely just in the last couple of years. And finally, it's come to fruition.
I love
Uh,
it. That's amazing. And I love that it was just a very organic process for you. You didn't
yeah,
like set out to write a book. You were like, I just want to bring kind of what I know to others. And then it kind of grew from there.
yeah.
Absolutely. So this kind of concept, thoughtful home that you talk about a lot in the book
Mhm.
and that it's in the title and all of that. Like, can you explain a little bit more what that means? You were saying earlier that people don't put a lot of thought into their home, maybe into their decor or, the Halloween decorations they're putting out now or whatever, but there's not a lot of thought that goes in. And why is this such a vital concept today that we're missing?
So, okay. I think what I mentioned, I talked about that cultural template that seems to be missing, right? So in the past, I mean, I don't think my mom, who made a good home, she made a very good home. I don't think she spent any time thinking about what's the purpose of this home? What am I trying to do here? She just kind of did what her mom did. She, of
Mhm.
course, adapted it for, the 1950s and 60s rather than the 1930s and 40s. And likewise me, I adapted it for the 70s and eight or the I don't know, by the time I was making a home, the 90s. Um, but I think now because that cultural template doesn't exist,
Mhm.
I, I or maybe it exists, but it's very thin. That we have to think about it. We have to pay attention to it if we want. We have to make choices that are often countercultural. They
Mhm.
might not be extraordinarily countercultural, but they are countercultural. If we're
Mhm.
going to have a family meal, one of the points I make in the book is in the 1950s and 60s, there really was only the family meal
Mm.
because there weren't restaurants on every corner. There wasn't DoorDash. There really fast food was very minimal, at least in my part of the world. I grew up in the Midwest. So there weren't a lot of options. If you wanted to go out, it was for a special occasion. Or if you were going to order in, there was only pizza. And I think when I was a kid, in my town, you couldn't order pizza. There was no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the family meal was just a matter of everybody's hungry and we need to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now, of course, there's a million options. And the the family meal is a really wonderful, it serves a whole lot of purposes aside from just getting people fed. But now, if we want to have a family meal, it's a lot of work. It's always been a lot of work, but it's a lot of work. And so, and we might not be very, um, we might not have grown up with a family meal. And women who are starting families today or starting their homes today, they might not have grown up with a family meal. They might not have grown up with cooking, and their muscle, it's not in their muscle memory.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it takes thought, it takes planning, it takes
Mm-hmm.
conviction, it takes knowing why I'm doing this because it's a lot of work. Um, I think the other side of that title, The Thoughtful Home, it's not just we have to think about it, but also there's another meaning of thoughtful, which is like a thoughtful gesture, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that idea that we're um, the thoughtful home is about thinking about others. It's about helping others to flourish. Our families, most first and foremost, but also anyone we bring into our home in hospitality. So I'm an empty nester now, but my the thoughtfulness of my home is not it's not like it's disappeared. In fact, now that my children are gone, of course I still have my husband to care for and to think about. Um, but the the fact that the children are gone really means I can I can do more, and maybe I have more responsibility for hospitality, for helping other people
Mm-hmm.
by means of my home and within my home. And that thoughtfulness of thinking about the needs of others, it's not it doesn't have to be huge. It's just if you have someone over for coffee, you're you're serving them, you're helping them just by making the coffee, by ad adjusting the blinds so that the sun's not in their eyes, by taking their coat and hanging it up, or making sure that do they need a drink of water, a glass of water,
Mm-hmm.
showing them where the bathroom is, right? We care for each other and we think about each other really naturally in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are in at meeting for coffee at Starbucks, we aren't even if we want to, we aren't really able to do that. All we can do is pay for the coffee, right? But we can't adjust the music or the level of the music or the comfort of the seating. Um, we just all we can do is pay for the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I thought those were really good examples too that you offered of, when you're having someone over for coffee and like the little things that you can do. Can you give a few more examples in terms of the family itself, like when you're having that family meal or when you do have your children still at home? Because I'm sure a lot of the people who are listening
Sure.
still do have those kids at home, or they have the kids who are coming home for the family meal on Sundays or whatever. Like, what are some of those small things that a thoughtful home would have?
Well, I think um, the home's not going to serve its purpose as caring for those who live there as human beings so they can flourish as human beings if there's not human contact.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that we need, and one of the things that our culture doesn't provide or provides less and less of, right? We have everything's virtual.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't in contact with one another. And everything, I guess the tendency, probably in part because it's economically uh, profitable, is for individualization. Everything, we want everything to be individualized. I was thinking about this in the 70s. I looked it up to see when it was, but when I was a kid, there was a um, ad campaign for Burger King, and it was "Have it your way." Right?
Hmm.
And that was the big thing. It's like, special orders don't upset us. We will make it your way. We'll take the pickles off. We'll put ketchup on, and that was a big deal. Well, that's just like multiplied enormously now, right? Um, when my daughter tells me what she orders at Starbucks, I have no idea what she's talking about. It's beyond me. And coffee's coffee to me. And I mean, that sounds. I don't mean to make myself old-fashioned. I actually just prefer my home coffee. But so I think the little things that we can do are sometimes big things, but they're things that will bring people together. And that doesn't just mean, I mean, it does mean around the dinner table or around the table to play a game together or around, sitting together and reading a book. But it also just means creating a home where there's a need and an opportunity for sharing.
Mm.
That's just like a really basic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we don't, we used to be, we shared a television. Now everybody's got a screen.
Mm.
There's no need to share. We used to share a phone. Now it's not just that there's no need to share a phone, but it's like sharing a phone is a weird thing to do now.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes we don't share a car. We don't share a bedroom. Our children don't share a bedroom. We see that as we're taking better care of them by giving them their own room. And we realize that all those sharing things, it's not just about saying sort of no to our desires, but it's about when we have to share a room, or when we have to share a bathroom, or when we have to share a phone or television, we are forced into human contact in a really good way, right? We learn how to deal with each other. We learn how to be patient. We learn how to make choices. We learn how to make compromises. We learn how to communicate, right? How to say, I need this, bang on the bathroom door and say, I need in, get out. What are you doing in there, right? All that stuff that if we don't share those things, never has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of those, they aren't like, it's conceptually important, but it's little things. It's saying, we're not going to necessarily buy that bigger house or expand our house. We're just gonna share. Um, um, I'm asking that of our children, expecting that of our children.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think little things like making um, making the places where we gather together naturally more comfortable than the places where we are isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Normally our bedrooms, right? So our bedrooms aren't pleasure palaces, but our public spaces comfortable. That's where the entertainment is. That's where things are neat enough, tidy enough that we can actually find space to play a game or to do a project or to do our homework. I think those are little, they're little, I mean, they tend to be little things, but taken together, they really change our experience of um, human contact.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and this is maybe littler things, is we also need contact with reality.
Mm.
So our virtual world, right, is everything is on the screen. An example I use is um, we don't play baseball in the neighborhood anymore. Um, we don't very often go to a baseball game in real life. We don't even watch it on TV together with our families. We play it, well, I don't, but we do fantasy baseball or fantasy
Mm-hmm.
football, where it's not really even real teams and we're not in person together. We're doing it on our phone or on our computer. Um, and that's fine for what it is, but we can't let that crowd out reality, because reality is incredibly important to human flourishing. That's what we're made. That's how we know things, is by being in contact with reality. So
Mm-hmm.
our homes can be full of reality. We can privilege reality. I mean, we privilege human contact and we can privilege contact with reality. So fewer screens, much more, control of the screens, which are the, the source of virtual reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I love my screens, right? We're using screens right now to do
Sure.
this, but to give that less priority to actual reality. So hanging real things on the wall, having, house plants, having pets, nothing more real than a pet. I
Hmm.
have no pets, but I appreciate the purpose of pets, right? Having, homemade food is something that puts us more in contact with our food than just opening a package, because our children are aware, even if they don't know how these cookies came to be.
Hmm.
Most kids will be aware of that because they'll be around when mommy's making the cookies, but they'll
Hmm.
smell the smell of the cookies, right? They'll know, and if they get burned, like my mom always did, they'll know that too, right?
Hmm.
That's reality, and they'll learn from that. They'll know something.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that thinking about what we put into our homes, um, those little things, it
Sure.
things that have a story with them as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm curious your thoughts on it. So as you're talking about this, I was thinking of my maternal grandmother, right? Who was the hostess with the mostest in terms of like everything was perfectly put together. She made everything from scratch. She's famous for her apple slices, like all of that was really good. But we felt like growing up as kids, like we spent no time with grandma because grandma was always busy making the food and setting the table and putting all the things together and making a beautiful family meal for when all the cousins and her children came with their children and all that. So, like, what would you say is also the balance of that? Because while she did make a beautiful table for us and beautiful meals every time we were together, I don't remember ever having conversations with my grandma about stuff because she was so busy in that, and you couldn't be in the kitchen while she was in the kitchen, that kind of a thing. So, like, where do you find balance in that as well?
That's a great question. And then I think that is going to be uh, somewhat personal
Sure.
for with your talents and your. I actually have a hard time cooking with other people in the kitchen. Um, I mean, that's not true. I have a hard time cooking um, in partnership with other people, like having them help. They say, "Can I help?" And it's like, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to help. I don't know what to tell you to do.
Mhm.
But I do have. We remodeled our kitchen and we made sure that there was a place. It's a small kitchen, but we made sure there was a place there, comfortable place for people to sit.
Hmm.
So so it became much easier for them to be in the kitchen
Mhm.
talking to me while I was cooking. Um, so so right there, I made it inviting for them in a way that maybe your grandmother
Mhm.
didn't.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, it's one thing to be preparing a big fancy meal, and another
Mhm.
thing to be preparing dinner every night for your family. So the things that you cook every night for your family take a little less, um, I don't know, like you don't have to think too much about it. You're a little bit more on autopilot. So it is a better place for conversation or even for allowing, or asking people to help.
Absolutely.
Certainly you can ask them to help, set the table. You can ask them to help clear the table. You can ask them to help in ways, even if you're sort of control cook like me.
Mhm.
Um, but if you can invite people in, people being your children first and foremost, to help, I think that's fantastic. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
all for that. I just am not very good at it, which maybe is why I'm also capable of writing a book, right? It's like, a certain mind, right, works in one way and not in another way. But also, yeah, the level of expectations that you have, I think you have to keep those moderate. Nobody needs fancy meal every night.
Mhm.
Everybody needs to eat.
Right.
And it's great if everybody's gathered together
Mhm.
regularly, maybe every night. Maybe not every night. That might not be possible for a lot of the people that are listening to this or reading this book. Um, but but more is better than less.
Mhm.
But fancier is not better than
Sure.
simpler.
Mhm.
And there's times when we're going to do it, fancy. I would say in your grandmother's defense, and I know she doesn't need any. I
Oh
can
yeah,
see the
she's
love on
great.
your face. I can see the love on your face. But my point is, she was doing something so that all the cousins could be together. She was doing something so that the family could be together. And she may not have thought this is the time for a great conversation with Katie. She missed out. But,
Yeah.
um, so I think, there is that. But yes, we need to keep our expectations or our goals moderate so that
Mhm.
for the sake of fostering human contact,
Sure.
that's what we have to be thoughtful about and say, maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on getting this all right because I'm snapping at my children, while I'm trying to get it on the table.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
That's part of being thoughtful.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I not to denigrate my grandma and her great name. I mean, she was
No,
amazing.
no.
And we all knew growing up too that like her language of love was deeds of service for us, right? Like we knew her making those apple slices every time we came to visit was her labor of love. So she loved us a lot. It was just a different
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Sure.
For sure. So tell me when you were, writing this book or when you were also, working with these young women who kind of encouraged you to write the book, like what are some of the common misconceptions you found that people have about the role and the purpose of the home? Like what is our culture saying now? How is that not working?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I would say one is that we tend to boil down the home the um, to like a checklist
Hmm.
of services.
Hmm.
That the home is about the laundry and the kitchen and the cleaning, which it is,
Sure.
but it's not. The goal is not to check off all those things on the list. The goal is to care for the people there and who live there. And that care is, yes, that they have, decent clothes to wear and that they have good food, that they get enough sleep. But it's also that they uh, have spend time with each other, that they spend time with you.
Mhm.
So it's a much um, if well like we were just talking about with a fancy dinner or something. You we don't want to say that a good home is a home that's always sparkling clean, or a good home is a home that has really excellent menus every night, right? A good home is a home um, that brings people together
Hmm.
so that they can be cared for. It's not just that it brings people together. There's other places that bring people together, but bring people together so that they can be cared for and so that they are comfortable uh, letting their needs be known.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say another misconception that I think is harmful um, is that the work of making a home isn't professional work. It's opposed to professional work. Like in other words, there's all the work that we do outside the home.
Mhm.
Our professions. If that's to be a nurse, a teacher, a doctor, CEO of a company, um, and then there's the work of the home.
Hmm.
And we we can look at that as either or. Like in fact, I work outside the home, so I don't do the work of the home. Or we can say, well, the work of the home is the only thing I do.
Hmm.
Um, it's a lifestyle. It's an ideology. It's not professional work. And or we can think of it as this, like what we do in the time left over from our professional work. It's
Hmm.
it's kind of like, how do we cram it in? And I think if we look at it as professional work, by which I don't mean we get paid for it. I mean,
Sure.
some people get paid for this work, but most of the people reading this book don't get paid for their work and don't want to be paid for their work. But if we look at it as professional work, we can see what does that mean? It means it's work that needs to be trained for, not just formally trained for, but we have to learn what we're doing. It's complicated. It takes time, it takes skills, it takes creativity, it takes energy, and there's a better way to do it and a less good way to do it. It's something where we have colleagues, right? We have, if let's say I'm a teacher in a school, I have colleagues, other teachers, and the administration where I can learn how to do better, how to solve problems, how to troubleshoot. I can also just have the support, the moral support of people that are doing the same work as me. Likewise, in the work of the home, we have colleagues, our friends, our sisters, our mom, Julia Child, Martha Stewart back in the day. Whoever that is, the pioneer woman or whoever it is that nowadays is giving people support. But so, and we know that we're capable of practicing two professions at once. We can be a an actress as a waitress at the same time. I mean, not on the same in the same place, but in our same life, right? We can trying to make it as an actress, and we're also working as a waitress to pay the bills. And those two professions can enrich each other, right? If I'm a waitress, it's going to help me, because of my exposure to humanity, to be a better actress. And likewise, if I'm an actress, it probably helps me be a better waitress because I can put on a good face. Well, likewise, I have lots of friends who are they have a profession, a very demanding profession outside the home, but they also see their work at home as professional. And that, I think that helps us, that view of the work of the home as professional work helps us to be less resentful. Because if we don't see it as professional work, then we see it as, well, why do I have to do it? We see it as like it's the leftover work that someone has to do, and so I have to do it, whether I'm doing it after work or I'm doing it full time. But if we look at it as our profession, then we say, this is hard, this is a drag, this isn't going well. How can I improve? What do I need to know? What do I need to change? Just the way you do in a profession, right? It's like, I'm not selling enough of this product. What do I need to change? So I'll sell this product. Or, and I always say, like, my husband never says, again, a professor, he never says, why do I have to grade all the papers? Right? It's like, that's your professional work. That's why you have to. He never complains. Whereas, I think with the work of the home, we can often say, why do I have to be the one that notices what needs doing around the house? Well, you don't have to be, but if that's your profession. And so you can take pride in it. You can try to do it better, try to be more creative, bring your talents to bear more effectively in that work.
Yeah, right. I mean, to really take care of a home well, too, it takes a certain level of education and understanding. Like, I mean, the amount of things that I don't know that I have to call my mom and be like, Mom, how do I get this stain out? Mom, how do I iron this type of material? Mom. And like, she knows it all. Cause like for a long time, this was my mom's full profession and all of that. And so, when you're doing it well, you do have a lot of information to even share with others. And, when you're doing it professionally, otherwise you've got everything stained and you have no idea how to clean a carpet.
That's right.
Or whatever,
That's right.
Yeah.
And the great thing is, even if all your friends are full-time homemakers, you still, I might not know how to get stains out, but I have a friend that does, right? And who can help me. So no one knows. It's too big of a job for one person to be an expert in all of it. But I can remember to this day, like that, after getting married, and I had cooked quite a bit before I got married, but suddenly I had to cook dinner every night. And I mean, I wanted to cook. I was dying to cook dinner every night, but boy, was that a lot of work. And that was for one other person, And now cooking dinner every night, sometimes, especially when the kids are home and I'm cooking like more every night. It's a lot of work, but it's not intimidating to me. It's not, I'm used to it. I'm professional at it. I know what I'm doing, and I've got many, many years of experience. So yeah.
That makes total sense. So in your book, you talk a little bit about how like a thoughtful home can contribute to a healthier, kind of more balanced society. So walk us through that. Why do you think that is the case? How is that so? Because I could see people being like, well, I don't think so. Like better education or healthier food might lead to a more balanced society. But
yeah, well, where are you going to get healthier food? It's in the home.
True.
But so the last chapter in the book is called The Home and the World. And I address this kind of head on because the thoughtful home is not a fortress. It can't be a fortress.
Mm.
It has windows and doors, and the people that live in the home, they don't want to be in the home all the time, including the homemaker, right?
Mm.
They're going to go out and they're going to, they want to be in the world. They want to be with other people. So the fortress idea does not work at all. And if that's what we're aiming at, we're not going to be successful.
Mm.
Um, so I like to think instead of a fortress, it's a filter. It's
Mm.
it's a it's a way, like in the home, you can manage a little bit what comes in from the outside, and you can filter. You can run that through the filter of conversation, of the dinner table, of the example lived in the home. Um, but maybe more important in terms of that, how to improve the world, how to improve society. People who are formed in a place where they're being paid attention to, where they're being listened to, where they're used to listening to other people, they're used to making compromises, they're used to serving, they're used to, first they're used to serving, they see it, they're being served, as little children, but later on they're being asked to serve, and it's natural. They're being, there's just a need to compromise, a need to communicate. People who grow up like that, they go out into the world with those, I guess you could say, those skills, but
Mm.
also it's just sort of that mindset of, here's a conflict, here's a problem. I've had conflicts all my life with my sister that I share a room with. I'm
Mhm.
going to be able to, well, let's try to solve this problem out there in the world. And I think about if our doctors, our teachers, our, the cashier at the store, if they're all coming out of homes where they know how to listen, they
Mhm.
know how to pay attention, they know how to make conversation, they know how to spend time together, they know how to, they recognize that they privilege, or they're used to privileging the human contact over what's on their screen.
Mhm.
um, they're going to be better. They're going to be, I would much prefer to have a doctor or a teacher who has been formed that way than one who has been formed by a screen or, in isolation. So I think that's the way we fill our culture, our society with people who are attuned to the human flourishing of those around them, and who
Mhm.
want to serve in little ways or in huge ways, right?
Mhm.
Who want to serve on the global scale, or they want to serve just, pulling out a chair for someone
Mhm.
to sit down in, or just noticing that someone needs help getting down, getting down that step, or picking up the things that just fell.
Mhm.
So that's the way, um, that's how I see it. There's a lot of other things that we learn out there in the world,
Sure.
um, but this, like, prepares us to do that learning, I think,
Mhm.
because we learn how to pay attention to
Yeah.
the person in front of us.
I really like the idea of the home being a filter, as you said, because I think in our society today, it's almost like we have two schools. One that's like the home isn't really that important. It's like where we sleep and like sometimes get a meal. And we have another that's like you were saying, the home is a fortress. And like we're going to create a bubble around our family. We're going to protect it. We're going to separate it from society. And your idea is kind of that median between the two of like, no, this is going to be a filter where you're going to get love and affection. You're going to be cared for. You're going to learn to serve, and you're going to go back out into the world,
Right.
right? You're going to
That's
bring
right.
these gifts and talents that you learned in the home to others instead of keeping them to yourself or never developing them at all, depending on
Yeah.
which side of that spectrum you're on.
And we have a lot of power in the home. We don't feel very powerful,
Mhm.
but um, let's just think about media. I mean, think about watching a movie or a television show as a group. In the home. Um, we're not we're not as powerful as Hollywood. We can't produce the movie or the television show or even the storyline that we want to see. But we do, especially if we're watching it together, right? If we're talking about it together and we're used to talking to each other, we can say, do you think what would really happen? Do you think they would really be happy together?
Mhm.
Why do you think that they are? Do you think that they make a good couple? The movie, right, is because of the music and the sparkling dialogue and everything makes us think, of course, we want them together, we want them together, and then think, well, really, do you think that they would be? And you can have a conversation, and you're more powerful than Hollywood at that point, right? If you say we don't have phones at the table, um, you're more powerful than the Google and Silicon Valley and all of that, Apple, and because we control um, who, what, how we use that device.
Mm-hmm.
We won't always control it. We can't control it perfectly. And, like I said, it's not a fortress. So things are going to slip in. But when they slip in, we can also say, you're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
doing that, because we're in contact with them. We see like something's going on with this kid.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with this kid? Maybe we actually look at you know, our parental monitor programs and apps, and we say, "Uh-oh," and
Mm-hmm.
then we have a conversation, and we can sure maybe something bad has happened, but
Mm-hmm.
we can nip it in the bud, or we can provide alternatives or provide the antidote or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
because we're paying attention,
Sure.
and that's a huge thing. I mean, we have to be paying attention, and the home should be designed so that we naturally pay
Mm-hmm.
attention.
Sure. Absolutely. It's interesting. This past weekend, we had a family wedding, and so a lot of our cousins were in town, and we were just commenting on how our family is very blessed in that like all of us siblings care about one another. Like I'm the oldest of nine. We have a set of cousins that are they have seven in their family, but they like care about one another, and we care. And like people think it's super strange when they see us. I'm like, you actually like all your siblings, like all eight of them, and I'm like, I do actually like all eight of my siblings. But I think a lot of that had to do with the thoughtful home my parents put together, my mom really particularly, and the family meals that we had, and the fact that we had one TV, like a lot of those things that we've been talking about today, um, brought us together to be able to like each other as adults now, right? And enjoy spending time together and not be like, oh, I gotta go to my brother's wedding. It's gonna be the worst. No, like we were so excited about a 3-day like extravaganza all together because like we enjoy each other, but it's absolutely because of the home we grew up in.
And what's wonderful? So I have three sisters, and I'm a Catholic convert. So my life is quite different from I mean,
Mm,
my worldview is quite different from my sister's worldview. And we weren't close growing up. I mean, we weren't geographically close. Well, we were growing up as children, but once we graduated, once we left home, we haven't lived close together. Um, we stayed in touch. We weren't estranged, no problems there, but in the last, I don't know, 10 years, when my parents got sick, they passed away. So we were together more, for reasons of
sure.
responsibility. And at any rate, we're very close now.
Mm,
And I realize that even though we believe very different things, we vote different ways, we are not on the same page, we are so similar
mm,
because I mean, I'm sure it's genetic
sure,
to some extent, but a great deal of it is the culture in which we were raised, the
sure.
home in which we were raised, the things we laugh about, the things we mock my mother about, and
Yeah.
uh, poor
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I hope she's laughing in heaven. But we have a very similar worldview in spite of having very different religious beliefs and political beliefs,
Mhm.
and that's the home.
Mhm.
And so, it's sometimes, sometimes families are really, oftentimes families are really, can be really torn apart by decisions, very different decisions that family members make. But we should remember that the home that we make is is very unifying,
Mm,
even in spite of or over the top of or underneath, probably underneath all the things that separate us.
mhm.
It's a great cause for hope and a real motivation for pouring our efforts, our energy, our thought into what we're doing right now, especially if we're doing it with a younger family,
Absolutely.
um, and what I'm doing.
I love that. So that perfectly segues into our final question is for those who are listening to this and they're like, okay, I need to get myself together and like create this thoughtful home, right? Especially like I could imagine a lot of younger families, right? Or newlyweds who are like about to
Sure.
embark on creating a home themselves. Besides reading your book, right? What would you recommend that people do to kind of start if they really want to shape this thoughtful home in their lives?
Okay. Well, I'm not going to say read my book, but what I will say is read my book with other people, with your peers.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot in there that I think would be really, it would be a great thing to talk about with your peers, to talk about whether this is possible. Is she crazy? Like this could never work. And everybody's going to have a little bit of a different, well, no, this would never work, but I think we could do this, that kind of thing, that sort of conversation. So I really do hope people will, like book clubs will read it, or, groups of friends will read it. But I would say if there's one thing to start with, just because to me, it's the secret weapon of the home. It's the family meal, or it's the shared meal.
Mhm.
Not to go from 0 to 100. If you're not living the family meal, if you've never lived the family meal, you didn't grow up with it, you're not going to suddenly start to do it, 7 nights a week or 21 times a week, as my mother did, 3 meals a day together. Um, but you can start. That's a good place to start. So
Mhm.
maybe it's just that we're going to have brunch together on Sunday morning. We're going to make that a priority, or
Mhm.
we're going to have a dinner together twice a week. So, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
um, because it serves so many ends.
Mhm.
It gathers people together. It feeds them, right? It nourishes them physically, but it also, we can talk while we eat, right? So it fosters conversation. We're doing something that doesn't take a lot of thought, right? We're eating. And so we have mind space, to talk to each other. It, so, and it kind of, it starts a domino effect in the rest of the day. If we have dinner together, we're likely to be together before dinner and
Mhm.
after dinner, at least for a little while.
Mhm.
So I think it's a wonderful place to say, well, what could I do
Mhm.
that's a little bit more, than what I am doing? And if we are already living the family meal, that's part of our routine. How can I make it how can I foster this um, make this experience a little richer, a little more about human contact? So
Mhm.
maybe it's to work on conversation, or to work on getting the kids to help a little bit more, or to work on, maybe it's like I need to start serving dessert or appetizers so that the whole experience lasts a little bit
Mhm.
longer. Um, so that's generally where I would say to start, because it does affect so many other things.
Mhm.
It kills so many birds with one stone. But it's a very heavy stone. I mean, like I don't want to act like that's just it. I'll just start having meals together, twice a day. Um,
Yeah.
if you can, yes. The other thing is, if people are at the beginning of this journey of making a home, that's um, such an advantage,
Mhm.
because it's much harder. Just use your imagination. If your children are in high school and you suddenly say we're going to have a meal together every night, yeah, right. Maybe dad's not even going to be on board,
Mhm.
no matter how good a cook you are. But if you start when there's a 2-year old,
Mhm.
and dad, uh, and that's just the expectation. And then you
Mhm.
say, well, how are we going to accommodate all the activities, all the sports and after school activities, and still have a family meal? And then you actually have, then you have the muscle memory, the habits to say, oh, I don't think this activity is going to work, because it will mean we won't be able to eat together as a family. Or we'll say, yes, we'll give up the family meal on Wednesday nights because of
Mhm.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. This is an amazing conversation, Dia. Thank you so much for
Oh, thank you,
this.
Katie. Great
Absolutely
questions.
appreciate it. And anyone who's listening to this can find Dia's book, The Thoughtful Home, on scepterpublishers.org. It is ready for you to purchase and read and enjoy and learn a lot from Dia and all of her experience.